All right, Thomas. That is a great score. There are so many cool things in it, and I think there's a lot that I can help you with here as well. So, I think that it's really awesome to use brass right in here and here. Just so many cool things that are so different from other scores. So let's get straight to the evaluation criteria with just one little stop along the way, and that is whether or not the oboe d'amore part is really justified in this score, and I feel that you do justify it in this one area coming up. I believe it's the beginning of C. But I think that for everywhere else, this can just be doubled by a standard oboe player, because I don't think that there's anything necessarily that's all that exceptional about the way that the oboe d'amore is interacting with other instruments, or doubling other instruments, or like providing a role. I don't think that there's anything that it is doing that is necessarily different from how, or better than how, an oboe player, just a standard oboe player, would be covering it. So my recommendation, which I'll expand on more later in this evaluation, is just to start with a standard oboe and then switch over. You have a very easy trade-off area where you can trade off to the d'amore part. And then then I think that it's more justifiable. And then one last thing to say about that is that there's nothing about that part that is not playable on a standard oboe either. So I think you should leave a part so that if they can't get a hold of a d'amore, they can just play the entire thing on a standard oboe, which will be a pity, because I think that solo is just worth it. It's really awesome. It's perfect for d'amore, and it gets to the heart of Falla's sound really nicely. But just have an ossia over that part, and just say that's how to read it for a standard oboe, and then that way it keeps your score from being unplayable, right? From having an orchestra reject it. If they kind of look at it and they say, oh yeah, okay, that we'll just have our oboe player just play the whole thing, and let's not worry about the d'amore. We don't have to. They might have one and it might be in bad shape, right? Or they might have one and the oboists just don't want to play it. Or just beg them any possible way that they can get away with not doing it, or they can't get a hold of one, and therefore they're looking for any reason to say no to one score and yes to another one, right? And they'll say no to your score. And I've been in that position. I think I've already talked about my experiences with assigning saxophones to different works and then having them be rejected, right? When I could have easily scored them for like a third bassoonist and an English horn player, or in another case supplied a different instrument, or just substituted something else. So just watch out when you score d'amore, because when you get a score like this that is this strong, you really want to make sure that it doesn't get turned down for petty reasons, right? And that you have a real shot of getting it performed. All right, so let's take a look at the evaluation criteria. Okay, starting with pitch weight in the upper middle register of the orchestra, or of the piano being transcribed to the orchestra. That's not a concern. You have a very beautiful full scope of the orchestral registers being represented here. That's awesome. The next issue is thematic material repeats often, possibly sounding repetitive if orchestrated exactly the same way twice. So that is something to think about. As I've mentioned before, it's your own judgment call to make. People are misunderstanding my intention of this criteria, and I will just make it clear once again. I'm not saying that scores which repeat their thematic material exactly the same way twice have a problem. This was a concern for me in my scoring, that I felt if I wanted to make an orchestration that would last for all time, that would be something that would get programmed in possibly hundreds or thousands of concerts, I would want a progression of the texture from here to there, right? Now, it's different just submitting a score like this and checking with me whether or not you got the orchestration right? That is a completely different issue altogether, right? So it's not a make or break thing. But it is something that I am putting out there for you to think about, right? Whether or not this is something that is important for your score. Okay. So with that in mind, just looking at the score itself, there is this issue that is coming up again and again, and that is the grace note of the same note, right? So the way you've got it scored here, they're not tied, and that's a good thing. But you're having so many instruments coming in before the beat, and that has a tendency to sort of pull the music apart a little bit. The way that it's scored now, it's dun 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 yeah dun 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 dun, and that's fine, right? But how many instruments are going dun 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 dun? You've got a flute player. I'm guessing this is solo flute, right, or single flute. So flute, oboe d'amore, first clarinet player, all of your first violins, and your second violins, right? So 30 players are going da-dun, 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 right? And so everybody will really have to follow the conductor at this point. And, and if this were a tie, God help you. You know what I mean? I think it's just like everybody kind of coming in slightly ahead of the beat and tying into the beat would be a huge problem. So maybe like this is something that could possibly be rethought. Like you might have seen, just I would say look over the past 2 or 3 evaluations to see how some orchestrators solve the problem. Like having notes that started on a B slur up from a different pitch, and then notes that had the B, notes that had a grace note of a B slurring down to a different pitch, right? That might be a way that, you can get this yump, 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 yump kind of thing that just really feels in time, feels like a strum or just a kind of a kick, right? Okay. Now, as to the orchestration of it, it's actually pretty cool. I mean, I just really love this. Yum, 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 dun, 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 dun. I feel that the dun, 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 dun is really nice and strong. And I love these solid notes. Bass trombone, tuba, and you don't drop the bass trombone too loud. And then the timpani, like, it's great. You don't really need anybody else. You don't need contrabassoon, or you don't need double bass or anything like that. You just have these boom, boom. I just really think it's really cool. Again, I love the way that you roll out of it with snare drum, tambourine, timpani, and so on. That's very, very neat. Now, the next concern in our little bucket of concerns is melodic development soaring quite high, the accompaniment figures covering a wide range of pitches if it were to be transcribed onto the winds, right? And here you picked one of the perfect woodwind players. Like I would say clarinets can cover the range, bassoons can cover the range very nicely, and so could bass clarinet if you had a bass clarinet player. So you've got this going on, and that is an octave below the violas and 2 octaves below the second violin. So I think that's nice, that nice triple octave that you've got going. Powerful. It's really, really powerful, and it just really conveys that, and it's nice and strong. Okay, so right here, like, and also just to mention, I like the balance between fortissimo marcato to forte marcato in the parts. I think that's really good, and also forte here rather than fortissimo. Then here, you're bringing down your untuned percussion to mezzo forte. I think that's also wise, but you're leaving your solo players here. At forte because they're playing a solo, and I think that's also they're not going to do anything to blot out the accompaniment. Okay, so but here we're running into a problem because you are asking the player to go all the way up to high E, and I don't know why you scored this for like B flat trumpets. I mean, why couldn't it have been C trumpets, right? Then this would just be a high D. But one way or another, I just feel that you're really asking the players to go high. You would be better off with, like, say, an E flat trumpet. So for that player, they would be playing like let me sort of think about it. It would be playing like a high B, right? Which is not so horrible, but like you're getting into like jazz player territory, and that's a different sound, right? Like one of the like a jazz player doesn't play with a classical sound when they're going above middle C, or excuse me, when they're going above high C. It's a different sound. So it's just a very, and I've heard players go all the way to the top key of the piano, right, to that high C. John Faddis, I heard him just play notes that just stopped making sense in terms of like octaves and range. It just was so high you could barely guess where it was. So yeah, but that's not concert playing, right? So there are a bunch of different fixes. Like one of them, like I was saying, just make I would say make a first and second trumpet part in B flat, which are essentially the second and third trumpet, and then just score them all together, and then have the E flat trumpet, right? You just have these together, score these parts together because they've got this. Score them on the same stems because they've got the same time values, right? They're not essentially doing anything different rhythmically. And then have your first player be playing like an E flat trumpet if you just really must reach that high note, right? And you still get a really nice, beautiful, crisp sound. The other alternative is to just drop everything, right? Like, score this for C trumpet, not B flat trumpet, and then drop everything down a whole step, right? And then you can get away with a lot of this stuff. You might have to worry about some rock bottom notes in some instruments, but yeah, that would be my recommendation with that. Just to really make this work, right? Because this is a great idea. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea at all. Some people might kind of question, right, whether or not this should be like horns 1 and 3, right? Like to double this up so that it has the same power as the first trumpet from below. And, take it or leave it, I would say. I think that it works fine with a single horn, but, especially because the horn is getting into a very bright range. So it doesn't really have to be doubled, but it could be. And then here, you got your trombones. Dutton, dutton, dutton. Okay. All right. So with those caveats, this checks off those boxes, right? And then here, I love the trade-off between, winds, and some strings and xylophone, and then taking over, like, since it's such a decided demarcation, byomp, and then like the trumpet and trombone going forward from there, and it really makes it work. It just it works pretty well, I would say. Now here you've got this, bum bum bum. And I love this trade-off, flutes, yeah, bum 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 bum, and then oboe d'amore, yeah, bum 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 bum, and then clarinet, yeah, da da da, and then just leading straight to here, yeah, bum 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 bum. Though, that like the cello could be playing the lower part of this. You're only, you're going up to a C right here. But I mean, that's all still playable. Like, you're just assuming that it's playing arco and stuff. You could score this in treble clef or tenor clef, and then I'm sure that the cellist could play the second line in there, and you wouldn't lose the strength so much, right? Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways of doing this. Like, you like it, sort of like you want the combined sound of the violas with the first violins, right? As being sort of a unique color, as opposed to having that be like the second violins, right? And then the second violin combination with the viola as well, right? So, I mean, you could do. What if you went like divisi up to about right here, and then at this point traded off to like maybe on the downbeat here, traded off to cello as the lower instrument. I don't know. I mean, that just might work better it just like I just it's just a pity that the violas are just kind of like a coloring agent here, but I mean, but I guess it still works. I'm not going to say that it doesn't work. It's fine. And just like this works pretty good as well. And I like the gradual pulling away, right, and that you're running up to mezzo forte, right, and you've got the balance there. It's just a lot of craft involved here. Yeah. So it's just like it's just a question of whether or not this leads to the following part. But I'll get to that in a second. But just to say that this also ticks the boxes of textural contrast to the previous passages, and also maintaining a driving staccato going forwards, right? So all of that has been dealt with. And I'll just have one last little comment on this screen before I go forwards, and that is the use of the X note head for cymbal parts. A lot of percussionists don't really care if you use them or not, but there's no need for them, right? If there is not a need for something, then don't use it, right? In this case, they will read their crash cymbal part perfectly well, whether there is just a standard half note head or whether you are using X note head. So just use a standard note head, right? That's the standard thing. That's the default thing to do, right? So I don't see any need for the X note head unless you are working with a drum kit kind of a thing, and you've got your ride cymbal and your hi-hat and so on, and your crash, like those things on X note heads, kind of on the upper part of the staff. That I can see, but I just don't really see the need here, right? And then here, I think you should, if you're going to do a kind of a thing, obviously this is going to last a couple of beats. So I would say tie to a half note and then let it hang over into the next bar. Now, in this next screen, just a couple of comments before I dig in. Just really, everybody who enters these challenges, really just be a pal to me and mark all of the instruments on the first page, right? Even if that really crowds things up vertically. So, for instance, contrabassoon, right? I needed to know that on the first page. However, you don't have to do that with all percussion. You could have just the percussion you're going to use on that screen, and then you could have another line saying percussion, right? And then harp could just, if you're not using harp, you could just have a single staff of harp and just say harp, and then the rest of it can be just blank staves. It's fine. But really show me what you're using at the beginning, because then I can talk about it as part of my lecture, right? And then please, everybody, please maintain the original rehearsal marks. Look, I know it doesn't make sense to you maybe that to start C right here, but it does to me, because that helps me to lecture about things, and then that also helps you with the page layout too, right? Of me, helping me to lecture on things. Okay, so that it's just more convenient. So please, C starts here. All right, so it just helps me out. All right, now let's talk about sort of the tail end of that last little thing, maintaining driving staccato, transitioning smoothly into the next passage. Here you're bringing in some doubling by the bassoon. And right here, just looking at the bassoon going forward, I mean, by the way, this is nice. I like the trill. I like the rip with the harp. I think you could cover more ground, and you don't need to write in every... this is a glissando, obviously, so you don't need to write in every pitch. Just have the beginning point and the end point and a pedal diagram, and the line that says glissando. All right. So, looking at the bassoon part going forward, I feel that you can have two bassoonists here, right? So like maybe the second bassoonist, like first bassoonist coming in like this, second bassoonist going, you know, bum 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 bum, right? And then the first bassoonist going yeah, and then this, then right dovetailing on this note, second bassoonist comes in going bum 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 bum, right? And then I'll have some comments about bassoons going forward from there. But yeah, but I just feel like, you know, here you got a solo part, right? And it's just a lot to play. Like, you know, sure, any decent first bassoonist can play this all the way through. But I just feel that this is an accompanying role and this is a solo role, so that should be two different people. So here you got Oboe d'amore coming in and doubling along to the bassoon. I feel that you get a lot better, a lot smoother of a doubling by using English horn right in here. I just feel like you're going down into territory that, yeah, it's totally playable for like a d'amore player, but it's still just, you know, it's just a smoother sound to use English horn right in here. But all the other doublings, like the clarinet doubling right in here, yeah, da 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 da, is great. And I'm just wondering why there is no, like, why the clarinet couldn't keep doubling here. I just feel it, like, you know, here you've got all the violins playing this unison here, and then you've got all the violins playing a unison here, but the difference is that you don't have any wind doubling right there. And I just sort of feel the absence of it, right? Okay, but this is so cool, like that you have the trombones and first horn take over. I think that is just such a great contrast, and you know, just as gives us a relief from kind of the same strategy over and over again, right? I like the fact that you throw in little breaks. In fact, that is like one of the criteria of this section, right? Which is keeping textural contours fresh, right, and not too much the same. So you're doing that right in here, even though like towards the end, this is kind of the sort of very similar with a few little changes, which are very welcome, by the way. So, yeah, so like right in here, there's a concern in my list of concerns. Contrast of color, breadth of texture, and middle register scoring. You totally have got that covered. Maintaining differentiated roles in closely spaced melodies, overlapping accompaniment figures, highlighting inner voices. You're doing all of that. Keeping high interjecting notes from sounding too glaringly repetitive. In fact, you are like dropping a lot of them, like or just making them kind of underplaying them a little bit. And I think that that's fine, right? You know, just like little touches from harp and so on. And you know, the little pizzicato here. So they are in the music, but they're just not. You're not pushing them into the forefront, and it's fine. And I think the harp is perfectly audible right in here. That's fine. Okay, and this is all cool in here. All right, and then we're going to this. I love the English horn part right in here. That's fine. The thing that I worry about a little bit is just like slurring to this low B, right? It might be a little problematic when all is said and done. Some English horn players find their low B, you know, kind of this sort of thing, sort of slurring down to it over and over again. They might just really feel like that B was just ready to stab them in the back every single time. You know, they might pull it off, but they just might not feel very comfortable about it. And it's good that you're doubling them with the violas. I think that is very helpful to the English horn player, but I'm just wondering if there's some better instrument, right? You know, if you're going to ask for an oboe d'amore, maybe you could have asked for a bass oboe or something like that. Or had your first oboe player just like break off into two separate staves here, and just had your first bassoonist play this, you know, it probably would be a lot more secure. So, all right. So, getting into this second part of B, I really love the, you know, there's a little downbeat from the timpani, and then throwing in the A here, and I think that's all really strong. And then this, it's this bum 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 bum. That's all very doable. Yeah, it's interesting how you like really don't involve your double basses at all, and I feel that they could be helping out a little bit, right? Like maybe playing this EE at the end and helping out the contrabassoonist. I think that the contrabassoonist could be going bum 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 bum, and then having the double basses go bum bum at the end, bum 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 bum, and I think it would be stronger for all the players, right, to have that kind of double sort of dividing up of the parts. Now here, I feel this is really unnecessary, sending the contrabassoonist all the way up to this high G sharp and then down to B and so on. I mean, it is playable from a first class contrabassoonist, but I mean, you already are playing this G sharp with your bassoonist here, right? So why does why does your poor benighted contrabassoonist have to play it? Why can't it play this G sharp here, or just leave it out, right? I think it would be stronger to leave it out, especially when you got that same note covered by your bass trombonist. I mean, you've got a tuba player, and this is another thing. Could you be going bum bum bum, and then having the tuba player going bum 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 bum, and dividing it between two players? I think that's just as the tuba player could go bum bum all day long, right? Could the bass trombonist go bum 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 all day long, right? It's a different thing, right? There are changes of, like with this, I think that there are less, there may be less slide changing involved. I'm not sure. I'm not a trombonist. Maybe trombonists will say, no, that's all easy. But I just, and then you've got this dun 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 dun. Yeah, what if you had these E's as trombone notes, and you had like just a regular standard trombonist, right? Your tenor trombone take over here, and you had your tuba player going bum bum, and then the tenor trombone player would go bum 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 bum, and then they would meet at the end, the tuba player and the trombonist. Yeah, so I just think it maybe needs you're on the right track with this, but maybe needs a little bit of work. And like right in here, this is all playable on a bassoon, and it just kind of goes on and on a little bit, and it would be kind of nice to divide it between the two players, right? To have the first going bum 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 and the second going bum bum, right? And right in here, like I said, you could bring in the double bass to sort of relieve the contrabassoonist, right? So as I said before, not impossible, but just kind of maybe just a little tiring and aggravating. It kind of goes on and on a bit. Yeah. I mean, when you come in here, like, is there something that you could be doing, like if you're going to sort of push into the texture with your trombonist, is there one of these parts that could be taken out, right? Just to sort of relieve the texture. Could you possibly do something with more trombones and tuba right in here, and then take out the bassoon family, right? And then maybe bring them back in at the end. That would just be another way of keeping the textural contours fresh, right? To kind of change things around. Yeah. Yeah, so this is possible to play non-divisi, right? So just tell us what you want, divisi or non-divisi here. Right, because the D is an open string and the A you just finger, right? And then you can just reach over and play the D sharp on the D string. So, yeah, so it's possible. Yeah, so, all right, so the problem that I see right in here, okay, so like I've talked about all of the accompaniment styles, the triplets and everything else, and there is a concern, like keeping triplets from overwhelming the melodic line above and so on. I don't think that is a problem. Like you can hear it in the you can sort of hear in the mock-up that, at least as far as the mock-up is concerned, it's not a problem. Okay, but what I feel is a problem here is that the melody is so soft, right? Now, what does it say at the beginning of the melody? Bar 34, right? When you get to this E. What does it say? It says, parentheses, mezzo forte, right? And then, after this, Falla has written in mezzo forte, right? So it's a crescendo, and then it's a sforzando on the E with a tenuto mark, and then after that, mezzo forte, right? So like, Falla is telling you what to do right in here. Like he really wants you to bring out the melody, ben tenuta or whatever. Like just really, bum, 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 bum. So it's mezzo forte, and everybody else, of course, is a little bit suppressed, right? I'm sort of seeing a lack of accents. It's another reason to kind of split things up, right? So that like the tuba player or the double bass player could be going bum bum, just really and landing on their low open E, right? Just real easy, and the not asking the contrabassoon player to do anything all that weird. And then the same thing here. Your first could be going bum bum bum, and then the second player could be going bum 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 bum. Bum bum, right? It just simplifies things. It's not that it's impossible to play with just one player. It's more that it just keeps it simple when, like one player has got one very basic thing to do and the other one has got a more or less basic thing to do, right? And you divide it between them and you come up with this perfectly, it ends up sounding better than if it were just one player sometimes. Yeah, so I would just say, look, mark up the melody, maybe make it more interesting than just this first violins, right? Because this is a melodic part. Like maybe that was missed or something in the and scoring all this other interesting stuff. But your melody here needs to be more out there, more out in front. Okay, so that takes us to the end here, and I feel this is really nicely done. You've got this ritardando, right? And okay, the problem here. Okay, all right. So the ritardando is in the piano score, and then what does he say when he gets here? He gives you the French word for slow down, right? So it is two different slow downs. So the music is slowing down, and then suddenly it's ya da 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 da. The way that you've got it scored here, it's just basically all part of a ritardando, right? But it really is a dramatic allargando right in here, and that is why I had the rehearsal mark here. Not that I would necessarily want people to always jump to there in their rehearsing, but why not? I mean, like I would think that would be the part that the orchestra would want to work on more than the downbeat of the next bar, right? Past the double bar, right? Sometimes the rehearsal mark should go in a place where people are really going to need to work rather than, than dividing the section up, right? So in this case, I feel that we're actually seeing it in your own scoring here. You're saying pianissimo crescendo on the suspended cymbal, right? But how come the harp, which is beautifully scored here, by the way, how come it doesn't have a crescendo, right? Shouldn't you just really lean into this harp playing? Shouldn't it start off mezzo forte crescendo? That's what I feel, right? And it should really be, like right here, it should be a very marked, slowing down in print, right? Pushing forwards, because we want to release into the next bar, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like we really want it's a very dramatic kind of a thing, and it's very true to the style of the music. And now here we get to the justification for having an oboe d'amore part. And I think even just for these 9 bars, it is worth it to have. But I think that after this, you can just switch back to a regular standard oboe part. I don't think that there's anything past here that clarinet plus oboe d'amore, I think it's better just to have clarinet plus oboe. I think that would just work a whole lot better. It's easier to play for the player. They go back to their standard instrument, and certain other parts will actually be stronger, I feel. You are sort of saving the player in one sense by giving them less low notes on the next screen, but then on the other hand, you're kind of giving them an F, which isn't the funnest note to play on an oboe d'amore, and there's some other issues involved too, which I'll talk about when we get there. But I just feel that up to this point, you should just have a standard oboe, and then just switch over to oboe d'amore for this solo. I was actually kind of hoping to see some more d'amore stuff at the end, right, where you've got this beautiful long solo by flute, which is great too. Yeah. So there are a few missing things, though. I would want a dynamic here, and I would want a dynamic here, right? And I would also want, like, throughout all of this soloing here, I'd want some nuances, right? Just like I was singing before. Ya da 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 dum, ba da 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 dum, da 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 dum, ba da da dum. I mean, it's so dramatic, right? How come there's no drama indicated underneath it, right? And the same thing here, right? So it's not enough just to drop something into an orchestra score and just assume that it's going to be that they're just going to add whatever expression is needed. That is up to you, right? So you have got to supply it. All right. Well, I mean, still, it's nicely done, and you are sort of reinterpreting the phrasing or the slurring, I should say, and that's cool too. But consider that this could have been portato. Da, 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 da. Do you know what I mean? That's like it. It's very vocalized, right? Some of these slurs could also be shortened too, right? Like certain fragments. It doesn't have to just be mostly across a bar. There could be like little inflections just tied up in how the slurs work, right? Anyway, but I'm not being critical of it, but just, like, how could you build this to be stronger, right? And then the same thing here, right? Just like you could have put some portato in there as well, just taking advantage of the existing tenuto marks and just stuck a slur over them, and then you get the portato, the sort of slightly dragging quality to the notes. So, careful treatment of the melodic voice to make it feel authentic to the composer's style. I feel that you have completely nailed that right here. I think the oboe d'amore is exactly the instrument to use. And then the contrast of English horn and the contrast of clarinet. I think that's all just so nicely done. Though, what should be the dynamic here is like the same thing, mezzo forte, or forte, or poco forte, or something like that. So yeah, same thing here should be, like, what does Falla say? He says forte, right? So he wants this melody to be nice and loud. So like his melodies, he's telling you to play loud. I might bring them down a little bit, just, like loud, but not too loud, but not like a dull gray mezzo forte. So, like, yes, there was a blum, 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 and then you have a brim. I would make it a little bigger if there's something, some way of, like, having a slightly bigger chord here. That would be cool. You've got this up an octave from where it is in the piano score. Could you maybe add a little bit below, right? Then, just to make it a more glittering kind of a roll. Okay, so the whole question then is, like, what about the accompaniment pattern? So keeping the accompaniment pattern from becoming too regular and therefore too predictable. I feel that, like, adding the little notes here in the harp and, there might be more that you could do to keep it from feeling too much the same. But in general, I think it supports the oboe d'amore part really, really nicely. And then like the way that this ends, I mean, I feel that that works really, really well. As to the, I mean, this is technically correct, right? It would be 80, I think, if it were doppio più lento, right? And then ma sempre mosso. I think you should include that information for the conductor, though, and then you can give them whatever tempo that you want them to go at. I had 100, right? You've got 85. Maybe it could be, you could compromise. Maybe 92 would be a good speed because that gives this life, right? This, turning this around and then going to the next phrase, you just really feel like, even though this guy had his big song, the orchestra they're just champing at the bit. They want everybody to dance. You know what I mean? This really, there has to be this energy that is pushing things forward, right? But this is cool, like doubling in our middle strings here. Very cool. Then we go, and then you have clarinet coming in. Yeah, and a nice big roll. I would make involve more strings here, right? Because even at that, like you're pushing to mezzo forte. This is going to start at forte, and this is going to be a big push here, and you've got snare drum. I would make the harp roll very generous and lots of strings involved, right? And I wouldn't mark this piano; I would mark it mezzo forte, just to to have a chance of really saying something in there. I like the low xylophone scoring, dovetailing with the harp. I think that's a great idea with it. With the bassoon coming in, doubling the cellos below, and so on. I think that works really nicely. Okay. And then, right in here, and the trumpets answering. That's really great. See, so that is addressing, the kind of keeping things interesting. Yeah, and this is really neat right in here. Bum, bum. And all right, so I'm sorry, my head's kind of going back and forth between two screens here, right? So think about the way that I scored out those tempo indications in the template, right? So a pianist would already be going poco rallentando here, right? And here you're going faster, right? This is 85 and this is 90. That just doesn't quite make sense because, like the pianist is actually kind of going a little slower here, right? And then poco animato, right? And then you know what I mean? I think like there were some reasons why I did things the way that I did. So if you just compare it to the way the piano is scored, there might be some reasons why. Yeah. Anyway, I won't get into it too much, but yeah. Right. So I mean, this should work. If you've got a xylophone that goes down to the F, then this would work, I guess. Okay. Yeah, and there's just a little bit of emphasis and so on. And I think that this is nicely done, right? Leading to a burst of energy. So I think you're doing the burst of energy really nicely right in here. I think that that's nicely scored. And once again, I think, standard oboe is your best bet right in here. Maybe doubling down here with one of your bassoonists, right? Could be good. Or breaking it up between bassoon and English horn, just to have a little bit more support in there. And then right in here, right in. All right, so I saw this in another score recently. So that isn't exactly what happens in the piano score, is it? Right, in the piano interpretations. Dun, 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 dun. It's actually an accelerando here, right? It's not dun 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 dun. That's not what happens, right? And in the actual score, there's nothing marked at all, right? So like do you just really want to push the drama up, like keeping in mind that pretty much most pianists, I would say that the pianist Peter Bradley Fulgoni was probably basing most of his interpretation on the De La Rocha interpretation, right? Which I also linked in the announcements. So yeah, she is referencing the way that Spanish music works, right? So like this is obviously like an interpretation of like a trumpet solo player or some other kind of thing where the pressure is being pushed into the phrase, like in terms of it like speeding it up a little bit and then maybe just drawing back at the last second and then releasing into the dance, right? So watch out writing retardando in there, right? Just make sure that that isn't just a decision made at the spur of the moment for the wrong reasons. 2 bars before, I think you should be marking rubato, right? Da 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 dum, ba bum bum ba da dum, bum 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 bum. Da da dum. Do you know what I mean? I think that the retardando doesn't quite work as well there. And of course, it's going to be very much up to the conductor. But this is really cool. Now, did you notice that in the in the template, I was really following the pianists who've done this. There's a fermata, right? Dun, and then the music reacts dun 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 dun, and then the accompaniment comes back in. Ba 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 boom. Dun 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 dun. Do you see what I'm saying there? Right. So maybe like it's not really anything that you're doing wrong or anything in the interpretation. I think it all works really nicely. I like the. I don't think you need to use A3 trombones here. I think that like 1 or 2 is fine. Especially like A3 trombones going to a single bass trombone, it's not a very good balance, right? Without the, like, maybe if you were going down to bass trombone plus bass tuba, right? Tuba. So I don't think you need all 3 trombones on that. But yeah, and especially like you're just going to drown out your cellos. Even 1 would be fine, right? But anyways, whatever you do in there, I just think it has to be very gestural here, right? The music almost is coming apart in terms of the tempo, right? So think about all of those changes right in there, and I think it'll make it just a much stronger score. Okay, but then all of this other stuff, I think works pretty well. I mean, I'm not so sure about this leap up to the high A and then slur down to D. Yeah, I mean it's possible, but like you're throwing A2 up there into the tenor register, which is fairly exposed, right? And I mean, look, what needs the help down here are the cellos. Like, who could be playing this? I think there are other instruments that could do this better, that are easily, could easily be made available, right? So yeah, but I mean, yeah, I would want to avoid that. Exposed bassoons, A2 in the tenor register without any kind of doubling by the strings. Just watch out, right? Because it's, precision of intonation, articulation, slurring, all those things become, it's more of a solo thing when you go up there into that area, right? And I just feel that there's some peril up there, even for good players. All right. But, I mean, having said that, the bassoonist from the San Francisco Symphony could do it, right? So, but, I mean, you don't know that you're going to get players of that caliber. And, this is all fun. I think, I would have my bass trombonist just sitting here doing nothing, right? Like, what if they were the ones hitting these low notes, and you just had the bass trombonist going dun 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 dun, right? And you could have your bass trombonist going, it could be going dun dun, and then the trombonist taking, or the bass tuba player taking over on the bump bomb, right? You could spread it across a little bit. I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways of doing this, but or maybe just leave the bass trombone part the way it is, but double it with the tuba so that it's firmer, right? It's just more solid. But bassoons can handle that easily. They can play that all day long. And that just leaves to here. So we've got contrabassoon, bassoons, and it'd be pretty easy to sneak a breath in this. So I don't think there's any problem with the bassoonist lasting all the way to the end of here. And then you've got this. So, I mean, instead of easy cellos, couldn't you just have double basses taking this lower D? So they would just basically it would be written the same for both staves. It would be very, very easy. Now, I just want to make sure that you mean that this would be an unmeasured tremolo, right? So, like when you have three beams, if you have a three-beam tremolo on a stem of a quarter note, you get an unmeasured tremolo, right? And then right in here, you've got the eighth note, so you just have a two-beam tremolo, but that adds up to three beams per stem, right? All right, so one of the problems with that is that, as much as you would want this to be, the faster you push this agitato, up to 155, the more it just becomes, they just become like a measured tremolo. Just it almost works better as measured tremolo, I think, than as unmeasured tremolo. You have to bring the tempo down in order to make the unmeasured tremolo work satisfactorily, in my view. Yeah, and then this big roll here. Right, and then we're heading to this section right in here. Yeah, and I mean, just once again, sorry, not to harp on it too much. But yeah, I mean, I think oboe would be a better companion here to the flute, right? And here you're keeping things soft, so I'm not going to ding you for using the flute in a weaker register, because obviously it's just doubling the, it's doubling your violin. You got your oboe d'amore here, and you're not playing octaves, like doubling the octaves here in the violins. Or of course, you could be doing that with the English horn and getting a much more beautiful controlled tone. But if you do have to have that combination of flute and oboe right here, I think that it's just better to have just standard oboe. I just think that control is better, that, especially you're going all the way up here to E, So I think that it's just better to use a standard oboe, which will be going up to its C and so on. So, bum, 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 da, 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 da. So you're asking, like, it's sort of like a transcription of the right hand, rather than like throwing the different functions, the sort of syncopation to one instrument and having another instrument go da 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 dum. You're just having, like, aside from places like this, you're having the first violins basically take over that right hand part. And then once again, right in here, I feel that measured tremolo would just work better. I think that just is more secure. Yeah, but I really love the kind of complex patterns that you got going here. You got a little tish here in your crash cymbal. You got tambourine, the snare drum, and so on. Some hits here by the timpani. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's hallucinatory, which is, a quality that I recommend maintaining in here. That's, just trying to transcribe that onto the orchestra. But I do think that it does have like just a slightly out of control, slightly woozy quality, right? It's almost like when you get to hear in the music in the piano part, it's almost like you've been dancing all night. You've been at this amazing wild party, and just like at this point, like the I don't know, the tequila or whatever it is, the high spirits. It's just sort of starting to make everything kind of go almost just like the whole crowd is starting to kind of rock back and forward in this drunken stupor, right? And I think that bringing that out in the music, if you can, works really well. Horns and clarinets, a good way to underline that, I think. And then more of that same practice, that ba 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 da da da. Yeah, and it's just like in your, like just keeping up the octaves, and I think this all works. The thirds in the middle, and so on, and yeah, and just look how high you're pushing your clarinet, look how high you're pushing your oboe d'amore here. So it just really is a kind of an, yeah, and then you want the real powerful fortissimo here, and so on. I think that you're just better off with the standard, oboe. You get more power, you get more clarity of tone. The oboe d'amore has this kind of sweet sound to it. It's a gentler sound, I feel, and there's a kind of a juicy, round, almost cutesy character to it, and so I don't think it exactly works it's not an all-purpose substitute for oboe. Yeah, and then these, like once again, clarinets and horns. I feel this all works really, really, really well. I mean, this is a nicely scored tutti, except it's not exactly a tutti because you're kind of, third trumpet has almost no role here, and like could the lower brass have supported some of the stuff that's going on here? Now, keep in mind too that there's something else that you sort of left out is like there is a trade-off, right? Going high and low, right? So low and then high and then low again, right? So that so it doesn't repeat in the low register twice until it's setting up that massive conclusion, right? And the scoring is so massive towards the end in the piano part. It sort of begs the question why you basically added some more horns here, but why isn't everybody doing everything they can to really just, except for harp, obviously just doesn't belong there, but why isn't everybody doing everything they can to sort of make this come off? Yeah, so I would just say enlarge, expand, get enormous here. But having said that, I don't really see huge problems here. I think it's some really fun scoring, and yeah, but yeah, it's okay. Now, when you get to here, you run into a problem, which I think you're trying to manage the problem. I don't think that you are unmindful of the fact that you've got fortissimo chords here, and then you've got this played by harp and so on, and it comes in here and so on. So like you kind of are trying to control the balance between these two factors, but what you're not taking into account is the power of this low brass here, right? All the low brass, I would say, and the timpani strike here, and the crash cymbal, and the power of the continued tremolo here. It's going to be forte till about right here. All of those elements, the hall echoing with the sound, with just the rebound from these instruments, and the continuing tremolo and so on, you are basically not going to hear the harp till about right here, right? It'll sort of emerge from the music, and then you're also telling the harpist to get quieter, so that the listener will sort of catch up by around here that there was something going on with the harp. So here's my recommendation, how to make this work, okay? Everybody should be playing an eighth note here. Just really have everybody stop. Da, 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 da. And then throw in a pausa, like a comma, right? And then, so that this is really starting, afterwards. And if you must have this continue on, have it fortissimo piano, right? So it's going, right? And then everybody else, gets that little comma, that little breath, and then that gives the conductor some time to place the half beat right here, and allow the reverberation from the hall to die down. And also, you can't have this big crash, right? Because then there's no more forget about the harp. The harpist can just pretend that they're playing until about right here, right? So just make it, da, 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 tsh, right? Just make it an eighth, a secco, whatever. Just that's it. It stops, and then the conductor is picking up from here. Fortissimo piano. We've got the tremolo on piano, and the harpist can just start at fortissimo and stay there. They don't need to diminuendo, right? There isn't a diminuendo in the piano part. There doesn't really need to be one here. So and then coming in here, mezzo forte, and you could actually put in crescendo here, and then here, just come back to like forte piano or mezzo forte piano, and then once again, just stick with fortissimo. And here, I would say, so mezzo forte piano, and don't do a diminuendo. Just keep it in the background, and then come in back in mezzo forte crescendo, and then diminuendo ritardando, right to this, and just really softly back off, and this is just so beautifully done right in here, this transition to the next part. And here's where flute takes over, and there's this beautiful flute solo. I'm the parameters for these brev evaluations were to just go as far as E and then stop. But I'll just give you just some quick thoughts about this. I think that this is very pleasant how you scored this, and I'm sure that if you had intended to have me evaluate this, you would have done probably a lot more work on it than you did. But there are some wrong notes in here in the harp part and so on. Harps cannot play double sharps, right, or double flats. So this would have to be enharmonically G natural, and so on. So there are a bunch of little things to fix and so on. So I'm not going to be too picky, but I just say that I really like the ending and so on. And I'm sure you would have made this, kind of probably a lot bigger in here. Maybe added some more, maybe some harmonics or some other kind of effects and so on, right? But very cool scoring, and just really enjoyed this so much. I just think it's a great score, Thomas, and I really am impressed by the amount of effort that went into it, and the amount of craft. You're really thinking about a lot of these things, and there's some foresight in this. It's among many of the scores which I think just need a little bit of tweaking to bring them in line to get them ready for the to be performed. So I think we're going to start running into more and more of those as we go towards the end of these, where people have really spent a lot of time getting their scores ready to do one complete run and so on. And of course, a lot of more experienced orchestrators are going to opt for the longer option as well. So we'll see more semi-pro to pro orchestrators involved in these later evaluations. But just to say that this was really a nicely done score, Thomas, and I felt that like a lot of the work was just so inspired, and that's always great to get as the chief evaluator here. And I'm not the only person who is allowed to leave commentary. And anybody else is welcome to make some comments below, to give Thomas some feedback. And Thomas, I hope that you will be generous with your feedback to your fellow entrants to this challenge. And if you've got some feedback, some advice, there are probably a few things that you could, whether to back me up on something, if there's a question about how something works and you feel that I'm right about something, or to maybe even contradict me and say, well, Thomas has got a point there, but I feel such and such might also work, or or maybe you even think that I'm totally wrong about something, and that's fair to say as well. I'm not claiming to know everything about everything, right? And I cannot know where you're coming from and why you make all the decisions that you do in your score either, right? And some things that you may have done which I don't quite understand will be perfectly reasonable to you, and once you've explained it, will make sense too, right? So these conversations are really, really important. So just leave them below these videos, or continue the conversation on Patreon with some other people who are supporting there. I think that it's just really healthy for the community to have this opportunity to come together, and I really appreciate everybody who's involved with it. The patrons who are supporting the channel, making it possible, and everybody who's leaving a comment, and all the website subscribers, and the many scores I got from them. It's all fundamental to how this works, and I appreciate it from everybody. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next evaluation.